A lot of people disagree with me on this, but I'll just continue to say that.
But I think name, image, and likeness is going to create a coarseness or a coarsening of college athletics. It's already been a business first endeavor, but now that the kids are really getting paid, the coaches now are like, okay, you're professionals and we can trade you and move you around. It's a fair financial exchange. And so I just see name, image, and likeness being a coarsening of college sports that frustrates, irritates, dampens my enjoyment of college athletics because I don't want it to be just like the pros.
So let me ask a question though, because I want to know like to what level you don't like it, right? Because I think that's important. Do you believe that players should not retain the rights to their own name, image, and likeness?
I think I'm somewhat dodging your question, and I apologize for that.
That's okay. That's all right.
I think that players, the high-end players, the ones that really make a difference, there's about 300 of them across college football, should financially benefit from their participation in college football. They drive some ratings. They drive some interest. They're so talented. They're going to go to the NFL. But the overwhelming majority of guys should be compensated the way that I was compensated.
Sure.
A chance to get a college education and a chance to move on and move up in their life. Joel, I said it on Speak for Yourself. I say it here all the time on this show. In 1984, when I was a senior in high school, I lived in a 400 square foot, one-bedroom apartment with my dad in the ghetto.
Yeah.
College football, getting that Ball State football, it changed my life forever. It's changed a lot of my family members' lives forever. That's a fair exchange. I was a mediocre mid-major player. For most of these guys, the education part, getting transported to a college campus, having their eyes open, tutors, all this other stuff, fun, travel, get to play, it's a fair exchange for most of them.
I think that you're right. So I'm going to lay out my first principles, right? My first principles are, if you have value, you should be able to monetize that value. Now, does everybody that is monetizing value right now or monetizing NIL actually have value? No, to your point. And that's because it's a completely irrational market. The buyers in this market are completely irrational buyers. And because of that, a lot of people or players are making money where they actually have not driven any value. Okay, so I don't know how to curb that, but you are right. Now it brings up another question, which is, well, let's put it this way. Jason, 5 years ago, I had people within college football and college athletics in general ask me, and some of them were commissioners at the time. They were asking me like, well, what do you think about name, image, and likeness? And I said, you better do or take 1 or 2 steps now, because if you don't, you're going to be forced or pushed off of a ledge, and you're going to have to be forced to take 10 steps that you're not prepared for. Well, as true administrators within intercollegiate athletics as they are, they moved like the Titanic away from an iceberg, and they didn't avoid it. So they got pushed off the ledge and had to take 10 steps that they were not prepared for whatsoever. So now we're in the deep end. We're off the ledge. Here we are. We're in the deep end where it's Katie bar the door. There's different sets of rules based on different state legislators throughout the country, which I don't think is beneficial for anybody. And a lot of the NIL money that is being spent or thrown out is used as a form of tampering or inducement, which no one wants that, right? Nobody wants that. And I don't, by the way, think that that's fair for any player. You give a kid that hasn't earned $500,000 and you give him $500,000. I have no idea what contract he signed. I have no idea how many handlers he's got around him. I have no idea what agency he's signing with or what contract he has with that agency. Is his earnings getting cut into in perpetuity, so many things. Like I could go down a lot of rabbit holes as to tell you why it's dangerous to some degree. If you backtrack, what the NCAA and really all of intercollegiate athletics, and maybe football more specifically, their problem, Jason, was that they never communicated and never got out in front of this in terms of a PR standpoint. There was this narrative that kids are out there languishing in major college football, like being taken advantage of and didn't have money to eat. That was not true. That was not true, but that was the narrative that was pushed. And it got pushed so far that people in the political realm found it advantageous to jump on that narrative to gain political favor and pass something that everyone would say like, well done. And so they pass things that are not advantageous for intercollegiate athletics. What we should have been concentrating are the few boats in the harbor that you mentioned. And I always throw out analogies like that, boats in the harbor. What do I mean by boats in the harbor? The few players that do have value, we needed to find a way to create systems where they could monetize that value. The 300, as you called it, or however many it was, there needed to be systems so that they could go out there and say, okay, I can enter into a deal, and a legitimate one at that, with any brand or entity in the country. But as it is now, you get pushed into the deep end. You don't have floaties on. They don't know what they're doing, speaking of administrators and people in charge. And now it's just money flying everywhere. And it's flying around, in particular, in the form of inducements to come to your university, and then tampering with current student athletes within certain programs. What's the fix now? I'm not quite sure. But I do know this, and this is going to be long-winded, but I want to spin it forward to this. I actually think NIL and transfer portal combined has made it too advantageous for the player. See, in any contract, and you know this, you and I have entered into many contracts in our lives with employers. And in every single contract, if it's too one-sided, it breaks down quickly, because you've got to have benefit and responsibility on both sides. There's got to be recourse for both sides. And right now, there's no recourse on the school side. Maybe you could say, well, Deion's had some recourse and he can basically just push kids out. Well, maybe that's true. But I will tell you this, when you look at the money invested into health and well-being, now NIL, you look at the academic support, when you look at mental health support, when you look at all the gear given, when you look at everything that a school is investing in a player, and now that player can just instantly vanish and leave. Well, at some point, these schools and these coaches are going to say, hey, it doesn't behoove us to continue to pour that amount of investment into something that can just vanish right away. And I think what you get then is what you get with Colorado and with Deion. You can have upheaval within a roster. You can totally turn it. And part of that is because it's become too one way toward the player. A lot of people disagree with me on this, but I'll just continue to say that contracts in any walk of life throughout your entire professional life should always be beneficial to both parties, and there should be responsibility for both parties.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.